The only challenge wasn't the external enemy. One of the aircraft's engines had caught fire. Smoke seeped into the cockpit. Elara tightened her oxygen mask. Since the damage control systems were offline, she couldn't see how far the fire had spread. The left engine indicator showed 0. She had to fly on a single engine. Returning to Copper Dune Air Base was impossible under the current conditions. Even the nearest civilian airport was too far. A location for a hidden military test runway near the base flashed in Elara's mind. This was an abandoned runway, not even marked on official maps. It was a place she had explored years ago with her father, could be subtly referenced as a guiding memory, a place that could only be used for emergencies. It was risky, but she had no other options. "Control tower, this is Shadowhawk F-35, Elara spoke, her voice muffled by the smoke. "I'm performing an emergency landing at an unknown location." The air traffic controller in the tower was stunned. "Unknown location? Captain, give your coordinates. Where are you going?" But Elara switched off the radio. She couldn't reveal that secret to them. All eyes were glued to the last radar trace of the F-35. On a single engine, with malfunctioning systems and under enemy electronic attack, the aircraft glided over the mountainous terrain of the Pacific coast. Even the emergency landing gear was inoperative. Elara was like a tightrope walker in the sky. She had to rely on her own skills, hundreds of hours of simulator training, and everything her father had taught her. The fuel gauge was on the red line. The runway was rapidly approaching. However, before landing the aircraft, Elara performed one last maneuver. She detected the source of the enemy electronic attack. Using the aircraft still functioning, though damaged, defensive systems, she suppressed the enemy's electronic jamming signal and fired a warning shot at its source. This was a message to the enemy. "We saw you." Elara skillfully landed the damaged Shadowhawk F-35 onto the sandy, old runway. The landing was hard. With the landing gear inoperative, the aircraft skidded on its belly. The screech of metal grinding against sand was deafening. The aircraft slid to a halt in a cloud of dust. Smoke filled the cockpit. Elara, after the jolt, checked her consciousness. Her body ached all over, but she was alive. The aircraft's fuselage was damaged, one engine was burned, but the plane was still largely intact. The mission was complete. A rescue team reached the clandestine runway within minutes. They first checked on Captain Thompson, then turned their attention to Elara. Elara's face was covered in soot and sweat, but her eyes held the tired gleam of triumph. When she returned to base, Elara did not expect a hero's welcome, and she was right. At Copper Dune Air Base, a tense atmosphere hung in Colonel Thorne's office. "Captain Vance," Colonel Thorne said, his voice stern and accusatory, "you disobeyed orders. You landed the aircraft in a risky manner at an unknown location. And as a colonel," he added, with a condescending sneer on his face. Yes, he held the rank of colonel, which highlighted that she was not just an ordinary weapons systems officer, but held a much higher rank. This begged the question of why command hadn't noticed her before. He was the force behind the past injustices, doing everything he could to undermine Elara's reputation. "How do you know this aircraft, and why did you take such a risk?" Elara held her head high. "Sir," she stated, her voice clear and resolute, "the pilot lost consciousness and the aircraft was falling. Systems were locked. The enemy was attacking. I spent years in this aircraft simulator. I know the emergency protocols by heart. And most importantly, I was the only chance to save that aircraft from crashing. Every pilot has a responsibility to save an aircraft from falling." She then meticulously described her simulator training, every malfunction she encountered in the aircraft, the effects of enemy electronic attacks, and the maneuvers she performed. Colonel Thorne and the other commanders were stunned by Elara's detailed and flawless account. Elara explained how she had trained herself for years, late at night in the base's secluded simulator rooms. The simulator logs confirmed that she had landed that aircraft hundreds of times under the most impossible conditions.
Furthermore, records revealing that Elara's past piloting applications had been unfairly rejected also came to light. The command center realized with astonishment how their own bureaucratic systems had overlooked such a talent. The inquiry transformed from a disciplinary case into a process of restoring Elara's reputation. Thanks to her heroic action and leadership, Elara's name was cleared. Colonel Thorny was court-martialed for unfairly hindering Elara's career and overlooking her talent. Thorny was relieved of his duty and discharged from the Army. Elara was officially reinstated as a pilot by the Air Force, but this was only the beginning. The Air Force recognized her unique experience and mastery of human-machine integration. Soon after, Elara was appointed as an emergency pilot instructor. Now she was not just a successful pilot, but a leader training future pilots to remain calm in critical moments and achieve the impossible. Captain Elara Maverick Vance's story became a legend at Copper Dune Air Base. She became a symbol of secretly developing talent despite systemic obstacles, becoming a hero in a critical moment and bringing justice with her own hands. Her story became a living testament to how gender discrimination and bureaucratic blindness can be shattered, and how true leadership can emerge from the most unexpected places. Elara was no longer just a successful pilot. She was a leader training future pilots, teaching them not only to fly, but also to survive, take risks, and always do the right thing. The system tried to hold her back. They didn't deem her worthy of the cockpit, but she secretly trained for years to achieve the impossible. Copper Dune Air Base, with its gleaming runways and massive hangars bathed in the Pacific sun, was home to the conquerors of the sky. Yet, in the shadows of this magnificent base, a silent talent struggled, like an eagle trapped in a cage. Maya Rodriguez. No, that name was now history. She was Captain Elara Maverick Vance. In her mid-30s, with light brown hair and resolute, intelligent brown eyes, she was officially a talented weapons systems officer in the Air Force. Piloting was her childhood dream, soaring through the sky, commanding the clouds. However, her piloting career had been hampered by gender discrimination and injustices she experienced in the past. In a male-dominated field, widespread prejudices against a woman becoming an elite fighter pilot had built insurmountable walls before her. Her applications were consistently rejected, her abilities overlooked, and she was relegated to a backseat role. For her, this was not just an obstacle, it was a dagger in her heart. When official paths closed, Elara Vance forged her own. Late at night, in the base's simulator room, she memorized every detail of the Shadowhawk F-35. One day, when the aircraft malfunctioned and spun out of control, everyone had given up hope, but she took command from the back seat. Amidst broken systems and enemy attacks, how did she manage an impossible emergency landing? This is the story of a woman's hidden genius and unwavering determination. For years, the base's secluded, unused F-35 simulator room had been Elara's secret sanctuary. At night, while everyone slept, she meticulously memorized every button, every system, every emergency protocol of the Shadowhawk F-35. She mentally relived hundreds, thousands of scenarios involving the aircraft's aerodynamics, avionics, and every conceivable malfunction. She had created her own private training program. In the virtual sky, she crashed countless times and rescued herself countless times. This was her silent rebellion, her unwavering belief that one day her time to prove herself would come. That day began with a routine reconnaissance mission. Captain Kyle Spectre Thompson piloted the F-35 from the front seat, while Elara took her place as the weapons systems officer in the back. Both lifted off in the base's most advanced fighter jet, the Shadowhawk F-35. The mission was a clandestine electronic intelligence-gathering operation deep behind enemy lines. Everything was proceeding smoothly. However, the enemy was waiting for them. An unexpected and coordinated electronic attack targeted the Shadowhawk F-35. Suddenly, warning alarms blared in the cockpit, instruments flickered wildly, and static crackled over the radio. The aircraft shook violently. Captain Thompson's face turned ashen, his eyes staring blankly into space. He had lost consciousness. The front seat pilot was effectively in a coma. The aircraft began to lose altitude uncontrollably. It was rapidly plummeting towards the ground. Enemy electronic attacks had locked down the aircraft's systems, disabling automatics. It was a complete nightmare. The command center saw the Shadowhawk F-35 rapidly losing altitude on radar, but they were helpless. "Spectre, what's your status? Do you read us?" they shouted over the radio, but there was no reply. Elara's adrenaline surged, but her mind remained ice cold. The front seat pilot was unconscious. The cockpit was filled with alarm sounds, smoke, and the smell of burning electronics. This was the moment she had been silently preparing for years. This was the final act of her rebellion. How would she take control of this massive aircraft in this chaos, under enemy attack?
She did not hesitate. She immediately unlocked Captain Thompson's seat in the front and pushed him back, pulling her own seat forward. She reached for the controls. The aircraft violently swayed left and right. Elara translated hundreds of hours of virtual simulator experience into reality. Broken gauges, blaring alarms, enemy lock-ons, everything was chaos. But in her mind, every button, every maneuver was part of a scenario she knew by heart. This was the story of a woman's hidden genius and unwavering determination. Elara established the bridge from the virtual world to reality with the controls under her palms. The aircraft swayed violently from side to side, alarms blaring everywhere. Captain Thompson was unconscious, his head slumped to one side. Desperate shouts from the control tower echoed over the radio. "Shadowhawk! Spectre! Do you read us? You're losing altitude! You're going to crash!" Elara's mind worked faster than even the most advanced flight computer. Countless disaster scenarios she had lived through in the simulator flashed before her eyes. On one hand, the enemy electronic attack continued to lock down the aircraft's systems. On the other, mechanical malfunctions shook the F-35's fuselage. Elara knew every button, every switch, every maneuver by heart. Her fingers danced over the controls as if they were an extension of her own body. First, she engaged the manual override systems to stop the aircraft's uncontrolled dive. The autopilot was locked. Elara pulled the stick, or control column, towards her with all her might. Her old injuries in her shoulder ached, but she ignored the pain. The F-35 responded with a shudder. Its nose slowly began to lift. Radar operators in the command center shouted, "Altitude loss slowing! Aircraft is leveling out!" Their voices filled with astonishment and disbelief. But the enemy attack did not cease. The aircraft's avionics systems were going haywire. Screens flickered, displaying erroneous data. The enemy had turned the F-35 into an electronic nightmare. Elara flinched as she heard missile lock-on alarms from outside. Traditional defense systems were offline. She quickly activated the aircraft's manual countermeasure systems. Flares and chaff were manually deployed. This was like a dance. On one hand, she was controlling the aircraft, and on the other, she was evading enemy missiles.